first have Miriam from the Dominican Republic. So in the brochure, it talks about like her story and like a day in the life of just her everyday life, and a few facts on the Dominican. So Miriam is a nursing student, and she's requesting a loan in order to cover all of her educational expenses. She's 31 years old, has a husband and 2 children. Her home and education of her children depend on her income as a domestic worker, and that of her husband, who works as a school bus driver. I'll read the quote from her. "It is necessary for me to obtain this loan because the income I receive from my family does not cover the nursing degree at the University of," that. "The degree would help me with 2 things I have dreamed about: to get my children ahead, to be an important person in society, and to give my children an example that it is never too late to get ahead." So that's just a little background on Miri. Just this one.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the geography and the demographics of the Dominican Republic. And all of the information that I'm saying today is from indexmundi.com, and you can basically just type in a country and you get like all of the facts about their geography and demographics. And then they also cite the source right below it, so if you wanted to like back it up, you just go to indexmundi.
Index money?
Mundi, it's like MUNDI.com. Or it might be like .net. Okay, so the Dominican Republic is located in the Caribbean. It's east of Haiti and between the Caribbean Sea and the North Atlantic Ocean. It's 48,670 square kilometers, which is a little more than twice the size of New Hampshire. The climate in the Dominican Republic is tropical maritime. It has little seasonal temperature that varies, so it's like the same temperature all year round. And then there is some variation in rainfall. There are mountains with fertile valleys and rugged highlands, and then the main natural resources are nickel, bauxite, gold, and silver. And then 16.44% of the Dominican Republic is arable land, and that means that that land they replant every year. They're like crops like rice, beans, and then 9.25% is permanent crop. And then if you want to compare that to the United States has 16.29 arable land, and then only 0.26 permanent crops, so they actually have more farmable land than the U.S. Some problems with the Dominican Republic is that it does lie in the middle of the hurricane belt, and there's occasional flooding. There's also water shortages, deforestation, and then soil erosion. The population in the Dominican Republic is 10,219,630 people, and that's the largest out of the 3 countries that we're presenting today. 69% of the people that live in the Dominican Republic live in cities, and then the largest city is Santo Domingo, which is the capital, as you can see on the map. And it has 2.19 million people. And then 13% of the urban areas has unimproved sanitation, and that basically just means that they have no sewer system, or they're like using a bucket or shared facilities, or they don't have like a toilet at all to go to the bathroom. And then 25% of the rural areas are unimproved sanitation. And then 95% of the people that live in the Dominican Republic are Roman Catholic, and Spanish is the official language.
Okay, well, I have the history of the education system in the Dominican. And in 1865, they gained their independence, and education was not legally regulated at that time, and most schools were run by the Catholic missionary groups. In 1867, the national budget provided for no more than 5 schools for the entire country. In 1884, Eugenio Amado de Hostos enacted the first educational laws, making local authorities responsible for providing and financing the schools. In 1918, they started their real base for education with Executive Order 145, which reformed the education system to mimic our American system. And in 1967, they started building training schools for the work industry that put special emphasis on the training of women. And between 1988 and 1990, the World Bank, the UN Development Program, and UNESCO began quietly reinvesting in the Dominican education, and UNESCO began to formulate the Plan their 10-year plan to foster interest among the leaders of the education and the business sector to participate in overall restructuring of the Dominican education system. And it took 5 years from the first legal documents created in 1992 until it started really functioning.
Alright, and like I said, I did the education for today. So, like Amber said, they started to base their education system on the ones that we have here in the United States. So they go to school like the same amount we do. They start when they're like 4 or 5 years old for preschool, and then they go to elementary school, middle school, high school, and they have universities in Dominican Republic, but they really push school and their education system. But like Jessica said, they have a lot of poverty there, so a lot of rural areas and rural area students aren't equipped with like the right things to have a school. So most kids in the rural areas don't have an opportunity to go to school. So they really push the education system for middle and upper class students and children.
Okay, and the government for the Dominican Republic is a representative democracy, so it's very similar to the United States. They have an executive branch, a legislative, and a judicial branch. That is a picture of President Medina, and he is on a 4-year term, just like the United States presidents are, and voters have to be 18 years or older, so it's very similar. The executive branch, however, also includes the vice president, the cabinet, and the secretary of state, and their vice president is Margarita Fernandez, and she's working on social reforms for workers at the moment. The legislative branch is a bichamber, and it has a Senate and a Chamber of Deputies, which is just like our House of Representatives. The judicial is a little different. It also has a Supreme Court of Justice, appeal courts, but it also has a land courts, and that means that it deals with cases strictly with land issues. So if there's a forest fire or something, that court would handle that, or if there's an issue between tenants and landlords, that's the court that would deal with that. There's also preliminary hearings courts and the Justice of Peace, so they don't have a police force at all. So like if you get a speeding ticket or you commit a crime, you go to the court. You don't get a ticket. You just have to go to a hearing for it. And according to Prudencia.gov, there are 3 political parties. Thank you. There is the Dominican Liberty Party, and that's the first one, the PLD, and that was created in 1939, and it is against the U.S. So it's anti-U.S. In 1939 is when the Dominican Republic gained independence from Spain, and the U.S. stepped in to help build the democracy and help with the economy, and so they were kind of against the U.S.'s help. They're also very radical, which means that violence tends to occur at their rallies. They are for the establishment of a dictatorship, so they're not in power yet at the moment. The next one is the Dominican Revolutionary Party, and that's the Democratic government. That's the middle one, the PRD, and the president is currently a member of that party. So, and they are also anti-U.S., but their economy is still going good, so that's a plus. And the last one is Christian Social Reformist Party, and this is the most respected one. It deals with the church, and it supports the working class and the peasants. And so they're known for creating trade unions and organizations to benefit those classes. All right, and the economy is directly related to their government, and so their GDP is $21.6 billion, and History Central says that they are 13% is their unemployment rate. The U.S.'s unemployment rate is 7.3%. So they have almost a double more than our unemployment. The major industries include tourism. 47% of their GDP is from tourism. So they don't produce a lot within their country, but a lot of outsiders bring it in. They do sugar processing, ferronickel, and gold mining. Their main exports include textiles, sugar, coffee, ferronickel, and tobacco. And this shows like their top 3 countries that they export to. And so U.S., Canada, and Western Europe. U.S. is we take a lot of their exports. The imports are food substances because they do have really good agriculture, but they have a hard time producing other items of food. They have gas, industrial, raw materials, and capital goods. And they import from U.S., Japan, Germany, Venezuela, and Mexico.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the lifestyle in the Dominican Republic. There's a large Hispanic heritage that affects the daily lifestyle of the Dominican, and the food that they eat here is mostly Spanish and African influence. Some of the major dishes that they make are, one is empanadas, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's stuffed bread or pastry baked or fried. And then another one is kipes, which is a picture up there, and it's a snack or an appetizer, and it's eaten with ketchup or Tabasco sauce. Tostones are fried plantain slices, which are like fried bananas. And then flan is an open pastry or sponge cake with a sweet filling. That's just some of the common foods that they eat. Rapid population growth, migration, and destructive hurricanes are what causes a lot of housing shortages, because there's a lot of housing shortages in this country. Most of the houses are, here's a picture, they're either like detached or they have apartments, and then you can see that there's like palms, and they're like not that nice. So they're either made out of concrete, wood, or palm. And families in the Dominican, usually the whole family live together, like the grandpa, grandma, uncles, and aunts, and all of the care for the children are like equal. So like say if an aunt sees like her nephew acting out, she'll like treat him like it's her own son. So they're kind of keep the roles the same. If men are able to provide, they will have more than one wife usually. And women are leaders and caretakers of the home. So if there's like a problem, it usually goes to the women of the house. They will both work outside of the home. Like the mothers usually won't stay home. And young boys a lot go to work as soon as they're old enough to go out and work.
Oh, somebody needs to go over and grab the cord. Perfect.
Okay.
And you could zoom in and let us see the pictures too. If you, because we have them right there, they're piled up, right?
Yeah, we passed them around.
Those are yours.
Okay.
I'm not hoarding them.
All right, so our next person, her name is Ala, and she's from Jordan. She's 21 years old, single, has 7 members in her family. She's in her 2nd year of college. She's majoring in math. She wants to be a teacher. She plans to work in the field of study primarily to support her family financially after she graduates. And she's asking for a loan of $1,050 for her upcoming semester fees.
Okay, so just a little bit about the location of Jordan. It's located in the Middle East between Israel and Iraq. It's south of Syria and northwest of Saudi Arabia, so it's completely landlocked, as you can see on the map. 89,342 square kilometers is the land area, and that's a little bit smaller than Indiana. It's mostly desert, and the rainy season is in the west part of the country. The terrain is a desert plateau in the east, and then highland area in the west. And then the Jordan River goes, obviously, right through Jordan. The natural resources are phosphates, potash, and shale oil, and then 1.97% is arable land, and then 0.95% is the permanent crops. So as I talked about before, their farming land isn't near as good as the Dominican Republic or the U.S. because it's mostly desert, so they obviously can't plant as many different crops. Some of their main problems are droughts and earthquakes, and then they have limited freshwater resources, deforestation, and then desertification. So it's super dry. The population is 6,482,081 people, and that's about the same as Paraguay, which is the next country that we're going to talk about. 82.7% of the people live in cities in Jordan, and then the major city is Amman, which is the capital, and it's 1.088 million people. And then there's a picture up there, that's Amman, the capital, and then the picture picture below is actually in Amen also, and it's just some students that are studying abroad. And then only 2% has unimproved sanitation for rural, and then 2% has unimproved sanitation for urban. So they're pretty well off, as I think, for poverty levels, and like I'd say that they're the richest country out of the three that we're going to discuss. The major languages are Arabic and then English, but it's usually just the upper and middle class that speak English. And then 92% are Sunni Muslim, and then 6% are Christian, and the rest are other for religions.
In further education, in 1960, only 3% of the people in Jordan aged 15 and over could functionally read and write. And before 1975, all students were required to pass a public preparatory education exam to be admitted into like high school. And they took that away, and they don't have to do that anymore. So now they're just admitted into high school just by passing their 9th grade end of the year exams. And in 1988, the government launched a 10-year education program just like the Dominican, and it cost approximately $1 billion. And the plan aimed to improve the quality and relevance of education by restructuring the curriculum to focus on developing students' problem-solving and critical thinking skills and linking academic knowledge to real life.
All right, so like Amber said, they have the 10-year education system, and like Jessica said, this is one of the richest countries out of the three that we did. So their education system is really well off, and they have a lot of upper and middle class children who attend the schools in the 10-year plan, and they attend from elementary to college, and they have a lot of universities that are really pristine. And these are a couple pictures. That one over there is actually a university, and then this is an elementary school, and it's divided up into different like sections. Like every grade has their own building, so as you can tell, it's pretty well off there. But about 2.5% of the population are enrolled in the school at one time, so a lot of people from neighboring countries come over to Jordan for their universities and for their education system, mainly just for high school and college, but it's kind of for elementary as well because they have a good education system for all their grades.
Okay, and Jordan is actually a constitutional monarchy, which means that there's just a king. However, they still have an executive branch, a legislative, and a judicial. The king is King Abdullah II, and there are no other elections, so there's no political parties for this one because it runs in the family. So he has a son right now that, if it continues to be a constitutional monarchy, his son will become the king when he dies. So it just stays in the family until there's no other kids, and then they'll vote on it. The king appoints a prime minister, and the prime minister serves for 5 terms. And the prime minister right now is Maruf al-Bakit, maybe, but he gets to administer any internal and external affairs that happen, including security, any epidemics, anything like that. He gets to be in charge of that, but any decision that he makes has to be run through the king. The executive branch also includes 12 regional governments, which is what we call local governments, and they're in charge of enforcing the policies that the king comes up with at the local level. And if for any reason the local government doesn't do the policies or is corrupt, then the king will get to replace them. So the king elects all the officials that he wants in office so that there isn't any corruption. The legislative branch has a House of Notables, which is like our Senate, and a House of Deputies, which is like our House of Representatives, and the king is also part of the legislative. So any decisions or ideas that they come up with, the king can veto or do whatever he wants with those. The judicial, there are 3 different categories of courts. There's a civil court, which deals with any civil or criminal matter. So the king doesn't have any say in the civil court. It's the only court that he is not a part of, because this court goes to any citizen, but it's also can trial government officials. So if the government is corrupt or a government commits a crime, then a citizen can take the government to court. So the king doesn't get to have any control over that court. The religious courts deal with any personal law, such as a marriage, a divorce. That's where you get your marriage license. And it also deals with ethnic minorities, so their religions, that's where they would go. Special courts are external and internal affairs, military offenses, And so, like, if we were to go to war with Jordan, any prisoner of war would go to a special court. So that's just kind of a fun thing there. And the economy for Jordan, their GDP is 38.7 billion, and their unemployment is only 12.2%. So it's still more because the U.S. is 7.3%, but it isn't as bad as the Dominican Republic. Their major industries include mining, telecommunications, and transportation. And according to economic complexity, their exports are fertilizer, calcium phosphates, mixed mineral composites, and gold. And they export to India, US, Iraq, China, and Saudi Arabia. Their imports include crude and refined minerals, chemical fertilizers, and agricultural products because their land isn't arable. And they import from Saudi Arabia, the US, India, China, and Iraq.
Okay, so for the lifestyle for Jordan, the influences are Arabic and Mediterranean. Is on their culture. One thing that's very common is alcohol. So a lot of them will drink it, but it's not a social taboo. Coffee is custom and symbol of hospitality. So if like somebody from this country were to offer you like coffee, it'd be really rude to not accept it. So most people will accept it because it shows mutual goodwill. During meal times, they will have like numerous plates served, so they'll be sitting with like a ton of plates in front of them, and they always eat with their right hand. And then men and women eat separately, which I thought was kind of cool. And one of the dishes that's really popular is called mansaf, and it is only for special occasions. It's lamb cooked with a sauce and served with rice, and there's a picture of it right there. For the housing, most people live in a 1 or 2 bedroom house or apartment, and it's made of concrete, mud, or stone. And then there's a picture. In the city of Jordan, many people will have smaller households that live together, but in rural areas, there's more extended families, like shown in that picture. In the rural areas, one parent works and one takes care of the family. And it doesn't really matter what parent, sometimes the dad will stay home too. They have like a lot of time where they want to be alone. I don't know if that's just something that was really interesting, that the people in this country like to have time by themselves.
This is our last country.
It's the white cord in the back.
Okay, so we have. Okay, this is Lillian from Paraguay. She is widowed and has 3 children, living in a home with her parents and her brother. Her goal is to be able to be a nurse and be self-sufficient to provide for her children. She's in her last year of nursing school and is asking for a loan of $700 to pay her tuition for school.
So out of the 3 countries, I would say that Paraguay is definitely has the most poverty. It's located in Central South America, northeast of Argentina, and southwest of Brazil. It's 406,752 kilometers, which is just a little bit smaller than California. The majority of the population lives in the south, but actually Lillian lives in the north, which it's labeled the Chaco, which is actually like more of the rural area, which has quite a bit more poverty. And as you can see in the picture, she lives in like a not so nice house. It's a subtropical to temperate climate, and it has lots of rain in the east portions, and then it's semi-arid in the west. So also where Lillian is living, she doesn't have much rain. The east has grass plains and wooded hills, and then the west has dry forest and thorny scrubs. But if you live near the river, it's going to be like more of a marshy area. And then like the big river that goes through it is the Rio Paraguay, which you can see, and then there's a picture of the Rio Paraguay. The natural resources are timber, iron ore, manganese, and limestone. They have 9.59% arable land and then 0.2% permanent crops, so not quite as good as the other countries that we mentioned. And then I'd say most of the land that they're going to plant would be in the east part, not where Lillian lives in the west. Some of their major problems are flooding, especially in the southeast, and then they have water pollution, inadequate means for waste disposal, and then deforestation. Their population is 6,623,252 people, and 60% of the rural areas have unimproved sanitation. So most people that live in rural areas either have to share a bathroom or don't have one in their homes. And then 10% in the urban areas are unimproved, so not as many. The major city is Asuncion, which is the capital, which is where she's trying to go to school. And then the major languages are Spanish and Guarani.
As their history actually starts in their colonial area, and education in the colonial area was mostly upper class. They either hired tutors or they sent their kids abroad to study somewhere else. In 1811, they gained their independence, and at that time there were a few private schools. And in 1822, their only secondary school in the entire country closed. And by the end of the War of the Triple Alliance, as little as 14% of the population was literate. In 1877, they had the inauguration of the public secondary school system. And in 1896, they started their first teacher training school. And their reforms in the 1980s attempted to make the education system more responsive to the needs of the student. And in the mid-1980s, the official literacy rate was about 80%.
So like Amber said, they used to send all their kids away for school, and they actually still do that for elementary school children. They usually send them over to Chile, which is a neighboring country, because they have a lot better education for their kids there. But a lot of people do stay in the country, and poverty still impacts a lot of the rural areas. Like I said before, it's really bad with flooding, and up in like the north and the south it gets really bad, so it's hard for them to get to school. And there is 14 years of schooling required for every student who attends school. So when you start in elementary school, you have to go up and get your high school degree. And most of the universities are in the bigger cities, like the capital cities. There's not many schools in the rural areas, so like I said, it is hard for them to get transportation to the urban areas to get to their schooling.
Okay, and according to Mongabe, Paraguay is a democratic republic, and the president is the only person in the executive branch, and that's the president Cartes. He serves a 5-year term, and he can be reelected as many times as people will reelect him. There's no, like, you can only serve 2 different times. The legislative branch has 2 chambers, the chambers of senators, which is the Senate, and then the chamber of deputies, which is the House. The judiciary is just distributed among 9 tribunals and courts of civil law, which deal with civil and criminal matters. There are 6 political parties, according to Benito's PLRA. And there's a lot of them, so bear with me. But the first one up here, the ARLP, is Authentic Radical Liberty Party. And the one below it is Party of a Country of Solidarity. And those 2 were originally, when they first developed, like together. And they separated because the PCS wanted better education for all grade levels, and the ARLP just wanted better elementary education. The one in the middle, the PDP, is the Progressive Democratic Party, and it wanted economic competitiveness against classes, and so that one isn't too popular anymore because it is a democracy, so there aren't classes. The NRA is the National Republic Association, and the BFP is the Beloved Fatherland Party. And the NUEC is the National Union of Ethical Citizens. And all 3 of those branch off of each other and promote equal opportunities among individuals, educational-wise and economy-wise. The economy, the GDP is $40.9 billion, and the unemployment is only 5.8%. And the economic complexity states that the major industries include wood products, steel, electric power, textiles, and cement. And they export to Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Switzerland, and Germany. And they normally export soybeans, corn, and electricity. Imports from Brazil, China, Argentina, Venezuela, the U.S., and Russia includes gas, computers, pesticides, and industrial machinery.
Alright, so Paraguay is a fusion of Guarani and Spanish traditions. And some of the food dishes that are popular are, they have beef and freshwater river fish that are most of the foods. Also, soups are very popular in Paraguay. And then the picture chipa, it's like a bread flavored with egg and cheese. The people mostly live in farmsteads and small adobe houses with palm thatched roofs, which is up there. And most of the social life revolves around the family, so they usually do everything with their families. Like I said, it's the center of the society, and they mostly have 1 or 2 children, so not a huge amount of kids. Extended family is really important, but they usually don't live with them. There's not very many divorces because Catholic Church is really important in the society, so it looks bad when somebody has a divorce. Husband is the head of the family, and some people will live together, but they won't ever get married. That's a huge amount of work.
Alright, so we know we just threw a lot of information at you guys, so I just wanted to reiterate what we're asking from you guys. And before, when we had you guys move around to like which had removed spent $25 last on, all the 3 girls who we focused on from the 3 countries that we just told you about, each of them are from the rural areas of their country, so $25 is like $1,000 to us. So $25 can get them so much more than it can for us because we spend it on a concert ticket, like a not a t-shirt, like a fancy shirt, or like tickets to the movies or going out to dinner with a friend. But $25 to them can do a lot more than that. So I would like you guys to stand up again, and if you would give your money to Marion, go to the right. If you give it to Paula, go to the left. And if you give it to Lillian, go to the back of the room. And if for whatever reason you feel like your $25 will not impact any of those girls, then if you would stand in the middle and be able to tell us why you wouldn't lend $25 to one of them.